All right, we're recording. Thank you. Okay, let me get my screen situated. We were just talking earlier about how I need about 8 different screens apparently to handle my life now. Okay, so again, welcome to the ALASC speaker event featuring Dr. Ulia Gosart. We are excited to have her join us this evening. And a little bit about her. So Dr. Gosart is an assistant professor with the San Jose State University School of Information. She received her PhD in Information Studies from the University of California, Los Angeles. Sorry, I'm gonna let a couple more people in here. Her Master's of Science in Library and Information Science from the Southern Connecticut State University, and her BA in Librarianship from Kiev National University of Culture and Arts in Ukraine. Her research focuses on Indigenous communities, Indigenous rights, and Indigenous librarianship. She has done postgraduate research at the Columbia University Institute for the Study of Human Rights and the UCLA American Studies Center, and she also represented an umbrella Indigenous organization from Russia. I'm just going to spell these letters out. I'm assuming L-I-E-N-I-P. Do you say it that way, or do you say it Linip?
We say it Linip. It's just for the convenience reasons.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure I was going to botch that. At the United Nations, and in this capacity, collaborated and consulted with UN agencies, the UN Intellectual Property Organization, and UN Population Fund. During her Master's of Science Studies, she also conducted work in post-war Kosovo on revitalization of rural library systems. Dr. Gosart is a descendant of Udmurts. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, close enough. Sorry. An indigenous community of the southeastern Siberia in Russia. Her professional work focuses on advocacy for indigenous peoples and has been shaped and informed by her personal experiences growing up with an indigenous family background in the Soviet Union. So before we hand the floor over to Dr. Gosart, we would like to hear from all of you what in your terms is self-advocacy. So we're going to share a link here in the chat to this Padlet. And if you just go to that link, it should show you the screen and you can just enter in your thoughts. You hit the yellow plus button and then we'll all see it'll pop up on the screen and everyone can see everyone's answers. Did we get that in the chat? Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, should be right there.
Sweet. And I'm going to treat this like a bag of popcorn in the microwave. When it slows down, we'll consider it done. Oh, I like that one, verbalizing and knowing your needs. Oh, confidence, that's these are kind of fun. Thank you, everyone. Awesome. Okay, well, I think these are some great comments. So we'll turn this over to Dr. Gosart and then we'll do another one at the end. So, all right, it's all you.
Okay, I was just looking at the answers, and one of the answers that seems to be more prominent than others was the standing up for yourself. And this is a good one. This is a good answer. And I'm not going to talk a lot, but I just wanted to introduce due to some of the, I don't know, some of the brainstorming over the notion of self-advocacy that I have had, and I'll explain to you what is going on these models that I'm sharing with you. So I have a rather, I don't know, mixed past toward becoming who I am at the moment. And it is very mixed in the sense that my family descended from a native community in former Soviet Union. And I didn't know any of it until the Soviet Union dissolved, 1990s, because my mom was very afraid to tell me why and how. And I grew up in Ukraine. I didn't grow up in Siberia, but we would go and see our relatives every summer until probably 1990s. And I was quite oblivious about the past of my family. I didn't know that my mom was born in prison because her father was a political prisoner in one of the Gulag camps. I only learned it in 1990s. I didn't know about my father's family and how his family was persecuted by the Communist Party coming to power in 1917. So all of it became quite known to me in 1990s. And I was a student back in Ukraine and Kiev, and I decided to become an archivist because one thing that I do want to find out, and I haven't found that still, is the is the grave of my grandfather. I don't know where he is buried, and that would at least help me to find out how his life unfolded in 1960s and in 1970s. I still don't know that component of my family history, but that really sort of shaped a lot of what I would be doing when, when I would go to school and when I would come to the US. I came to the US in the middle of 1990s, and Soviet Union dissolution was quite difficult. For example, when we would go to school in 1990s in the university, and I went to my library school in Kiev, we would come and we would have no classes because people were protesting. So we would go and do student hunger strikes. Did I learn much? Not really, but it was one of those times when you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And you sort of look back, and the Soviet Union was a place that I associate with the sense of security, maybe because I was young, maybe because things were simple. But 1990s hit hard. There was a lot of criminals on the streets. There was a lot of poverty. And you didn't know what's going to be happening next. There were wars happening, started to sort of spring here and there, particularly in the former Yugoslavia, but also in the Caucasus, which was a part of the former Soviet Union. Russia was doing a lot of. I immigrated, and I sort of had no clue about what I would want to do. And I work as a babysitter, I married, I had little kids, and I was just, testing my way out. I found a library school, and I lived in Connecticut back then, and I thought that perhaps I should get a master's degree in library and work as a librarian. And that was the moment when, a lot of things had changed, and I sort of stepped in on my advocacy path that shaped a lot of what I would be doing as a scholar and later on as a teacher, and continue doing it. And I'll tell you that stories when I show you some of the pictures. But looking back and asking myself how and why doing system advocacy, meaning working with NGO primarily and with community of activists, political activists, gave me a lot of sense of belonging and sense of meaning, and actually shaped my scholarship and led me to become what I am. In other words, in my career, I didn't really have a career plan. I sort of was moved by various forces that pushed me here, pushed me there, and I ended up where I am at the moment. And I obviously have no regrets. I made so many mistakes, and the path was long and windy. But what I had learned is that when it comes to standing up for your own self, it takes multiple components of who you are. And that little diagram, the indivisible self that I'm sharing with you, helps to sort of bring out the notion of self, a notion of us identifying who we are, using less of a dictionary-based definition approach. When you open a dictionary and you have a word and you have a definition for that word, but rather a contextual ways of meaning making. Because when you ask yourself, who am I? What do I mean by my own self? You will have multiple answers. I'm a mother, I'm a student, I'm a friend, I might be in love, I might be a neighbor, I might be sitting at this room at this particular time and this particular place, and I'm just situated in a specific context that make me feel good or feel bad. I might be hungry, I might be thirsty, I might want a glass of wine, I might have a headache, I might have a lot of anxiety. So there are so many various little components of self that come and pop up into your head right away, that you cannot have one clear definition of what you are, what yourself means, unless you start putting these little, components of yourself into different categories. And I'm speaking librarian language. I'm speaking, classification and cataloging sort of approach. Well, because I like cataloging and because I am a librarian, I work in multiple library institutions. But what I'm trying to tell you is that there are many contextual components of self that continuously change and continuously actually shape who we are and how we move through our reality, how we see that reality, how we define it, and how we act upon it. And self-advocacy is actually identifying first these little components of your own self that need help, that need support, and sometimes that need connection with outside world, just to develop, just to grow, and just to, in fact, help us find meaning in in our everyday life, and as well as our careers and our life eventually. So that notion of self, that little circle with the indivisible self in the middle, I think helps a little bit to visualize my long talk about contextualizing who we are, contextualizing our experiences and our ways of talking about these experiences, making them meaningful and situating our own our own being within different contextual sort of settings. And this one gives us 5 little circles around one in the middle, as well as give us multiple contextual settings on the side on the left that actually help us see ourselves in different surroundings, discover something about ourselves and about our needs and about our wants and aspirations, and then act upon those and make relationship with others. So when it comes to self-advocacy, it's actually a little bit complicated, but it is also quite creative process, because I think that one of the core things about standing up for yourself and finding, your own footing on this, on this planet, on this earth, is being able to move with the change, and to move not seamlessly, but to move in a way that would be something that sort of help us to move with the flow. Let me just sort of rework it and then move you to the right side of the planet. And this is a medicine wheel, a model based on the medicine wheel. Medicine wheel, it is an also model, but this one comes from, it comes from Canada actually, but the medicine wheel symbol, medicine wheel model is quite prominent among First Nations and Native people here in the US. And the whole notion of medicine wheel is very similar to the notion of not multiple self, but self that is developing and changing continuously, depending on the context in which we find ourselves in different point of our being. It helps us to imagine and embrace, I guess, changes around us, changes of weather, changes of mood, changes in our aging, changes in our body, changes in our moods, changes in our surroundings. And each of these changes, the medicine wheel actually represents in different colors. As well as it situates our own being in something more than just one place. It situates us within the geography of where we are, within time context, but also within the universe. And I find the medicine wheel model quite helpful when I teach when I teach knowledge classification, actually in one of my classes, but I also find it much more helpful when we talk about wellness and when we sort of try to envision what our lives look like, when we try to model it, unfold it, and take care of different components of ourselves. I'm gonna stop here and ask if what I've just said is clear, or if there are little things that I should clarify. Perhaps these models do not make, some parts of these models do not make sense. Just please ask. I'll be happy to add and sort of dive into that. Yes, absolutely. So this is the medicine wheel on the right actually talks about the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical components of your being, which we can associate with both our own self or little sort of component of ourselves that is indivisible and we associate ourselves with, as well as we can associate it with the outside world. And in fact, what I like about these models is that inside and outside are actually in a constant relationship. It's not that inside and outside are separated. We separate them for modeling reasons, for just explaining it, but in fact, it's all sort of one and the same. It's all like a big net of relationship that continuously change. I like to imagine this on a molecular level. When we look at our bodies through the microscope, we see ourselves continuously moving and changing and influencing each other. And it's sort of a chaotic way of being, but at the same time, our bodies are not as chaotic, but they continuously change. And everything that we see outside of ourselves is changing just like that. So we are all part of something much more bigger, even though it's difficult to imagine and see. And that model helps sort of picture it out. Then we see different colors, right? And they obviously represent different components of self, as well as different components of our being or our life unfolding within 4 directions that actually work as a holistic whole. And you see the western door, northern door, eastern, and southern door as the 4 geographical directions, but these are also directions in the universe. And some people actually add 2 more. It's the sky, and then it's the earth. So we have not 4, but 6 directional medicine wheel. Then it represents parts of the year, the seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, as well as it represents our components of our life cycle, the age, the childhood, the youth, the middle ages, and then the wise age when we get older. And what I like also about these models is that it's all actually connected. It's all sort of the same, and we can actually see one part as a part of an indivisible self that is might be represented in one of the little circles as well as one of the big circles. It's almost as we imagine ourselves not only a part of the earth, but part of the universe, something much more bigger than us, but made of the same materials as ourselves. I like to think of ourselves as made of the stardust. It's just something incredible to think about. It's on the level of physics and chemistry, but it just tells us how close we are with so many things that we don't really know much about. So, yeah. And yes, it does. Intersectionality is actually, to me, intersectionality also has the same idea, fundamental idea, some sort of assumption about the world, that we cannot talk about one component of our identity, racial identity or ethnic identity, without associating this component with other contextual, we have to contextualize it. And when we talk about race, we obviously talk about multiple other components, political self, economic self, in what kind of surroundings we find ourselves and how it shapes how we see ourselves and how others see us, and how that outlook of others actually shape our own understanding of who we are and what our place in this society, in this world is. Yeah. So we can move to the pictures if you'd like, if you don't have these any more questions, but this is sort of my theoretical component and my little lecture for today. And I'd like to just share with you some of the dearest moments of my own work that actually shaped and was really meaningful to me. So when I was young, when I was in master's program, I was contacted by a friend who happened to be in Kosovo, and it's early 1980s. It's early 2000s, and Kosovo was one of the late, with the Yugoslavia, the war in Kosovo happened relatively later, 1999. So this is 2003, 2004. When the friend contacted me and just asked if I could come and evaluate library system. And I had 2 little children at home. And I said, okay, I'll come for a couple of weeks. I was quite curious. I had no fear to go into a place that was stricken by the war. I had, no idea what I would see, and I just went. And that was the start of my advocacy journey that was quite interesting. So in Kosovo, I've met a lot of people. I ended up actually going back and forth for 2 years, doing the work with the Ministry of Culture, actually, as well as the UNMIG, the UN mission in Kosovo. That was very much connected to the K4, and that was an international army. And here I'm standing with one of the officers who spoke 12 languages, actually. It was very interesting to see and speak with. I've met a lot of people. I've also met a lot of teenagers who were physically wounded by the war. And here on the top, this is me, and the girl who's sitting there is so this is me so what I've done in Kosovo, I've done the research, we went to the IFLA conference with the people from the ministry, we did the report, and we did a, evaluation of a library system, and that was fun. But what really, was meaningful to me was help of my family, was help of my friends. It was a very small group of people, actually. I did my first fundraising, and we opened a school library, and we, throughout my travels, we came to this village of Zociste. It's right in the middle, and it's an Albanian village. They had a library. They served 3 other villages. Was completely destroyed. They had like 3 or 4 books that were like in the cabinet of the school director, who would not give these books to anyone because these were literally treasure. And I'm like, I'm in a library school. Our public libraries have a lot of books that they discard. And they said, well, we have a lot of books that people send from the US. We don't need those books. And this is what I've learned traveling throughout Kosovo and seeing what libraries had. By the way, only men worked in the library. It was very difficult to be the only woman, continuously tested and made fun of by all the men, particularly those who spoke Albanian and who I could not understand. That was a very interesting experience, working with just men in the libraries, in the ministry, not with the international folks, because there were a lot of international women, but Kosovar women were not part of this whole scene, because it's a very traditional society. So I came back to Connecticut, and I went with my children. I had a big, truck, how moms have these trucks, and we went from one public library to the other, and we collected books that the libraries didn't need. We put the jars in Stop and Shop, and people donated. Some people donated 1 cent, some people donated 10 cents, but it was, I think we collected about $500 or $600 doing it. And we were able to get just enough to ship the books to Kosovo. So we did. And then my friends in Kosovo, so this is my kids are on the sides, and this is our fundraiser, and this is my little one who's 23 now, and that's my older one who's 25 and writing his dissertation, and this is our basement and the boxes, and they help to put the books in the boxes. Little one is in the box himself. And then the books went to Kosovo. So these are me in Pristina with actually all these 2 girls and this man. It was very fun. That was very fun. And so we unpacked the books, and then we brought them to the village, and this is how we put them in together. So we put all the stickers on the shelves. We did the card catalog. We took the index cards, card catalog. And then we put some of the pictures from the kids from Connecticut, from their elementary school on the wall. And this one was the trees, actually. I think it's my son's, because that's how he drew trees. And so that was what I've done. And believe it or not, for a very long time period, until actually this year, that was the best thing I've done for library field, is opening this library. I thought that villagers would take these books and the library would not survive. But after we've left, somebody donated computers, old ones, of course. And a few years went by, and the library actually survived, and it functions. It serves 3 villages, and I'm just very happy that I was a part of it. Well, almost 20 years ago, but that was something that I've done when I was a library student, getting my master's degree. So we can move to the other slide, and this is also associated with this project. When I was in Pristina, Kosovo, I went to a school. I missed my kids so bad when I was there. I would miss them until I would just cry. So I went to the school with a friend of mine who was learning English and I was learning Albanian. So it was very fun to make a friend there, a girl. She would show me around and, introduce me to various things and tell me, what's hot and how I should dress and how should I dress. I mean, that was very fun to be friends with Valmira. But we collected these pictures, and this is the children drawing exhibition I put together in the Guilford Public Library in Connecticut. And so these are drawings of children who saw the war, and some of these drawings were quite dreadful because you would see children drawing the war and drawing, obviously, the red flag with the eagle is the symbol of liberation for the Kosovars. And Kosovars had a very difficult history and story and independence. So yeah, I did this, and that was what, 2004 or 2005 before I came to UCLA. But that exhibition was very dear to me, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, how it sort of stuck with me until for the rest of my, So that was that was right before I went to UCLA. And during this experience, I actually met Anne Gilliland, who, if you are in archival area, you probably know her work. She's one of the leading archivist scholars in the nation. And I actually met her through a friend because I had questions about the Kosovo system, and she was doing work in Croatia, and she said, why don't you come to UCLA and write a PhD? And I said, no, I don't want to write a PhD thesis. I want to work at the United Nations, because when I came back from Kosovo, can we move to the other slide? I'll show you another fun picture. So this one right here on the left, I was still in Connecticut. I didn't, I don't know how, but I've read that they looked for volunteers at the UN, United Nations, for the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I had no idea what it is, but they looked for volunteers who would speak Russian. And it was 2 hours from where I was. So I said, why don't I just go and, spend a couple of days in New York City, which is very fun. But perhaps I'll meet somebody from where my family is from. And so I came, and this picture is very dear to me because Pascal, who is standing right there, and then Patricia is no longer a part, and this girl actually left quite quickly. She was the first director. This is the team of NGO people who started the first archive that at the moment is the only one and biggest in the world that collects political statements of indigenous politicians. And I started with them, and now Pascal, his kids are old, my kids are old, we've been keeping in touch, the organization grew. And now my student is a volunteer at this organization. And, that's been a very long term. But my idea was to finish up my work with the, my library degree and become an archivist for the UN, because I've met a lot of folks from Russia, and I've learned that what's going on in Russia is actually, is something that I really want to do, because it brought back everything what my family went through. But Anne Gilliland was very persuasive. She said, you should write your PhD thesis. And I learned it in Kosovo too. People I worked with, I was, just a volunteer in the sense of my monetary situation. But all the diplomats had all advanced degrees. So I said, well, why not? And I came to UCLA, and Anne Gilliland was the one who actually secured me the place. And she said, you do your work. If you want to do your indigenous thing, do it. And, UCLA is all at your disposal. And so this is how I started writing my PhD thesis. So when I went to that first forum, I met people from Russia, and they asked me, I met Gula, and now we go to this picture. I met Gula. She's a good friend, and we don't communicate now because you it's very difficult to communicate with anyone from Russia. But this is some years later, and Gula was the president of the LINIP, Laureatlan Education and Information Network for Indigenous People. And what our organization have done is just created information centers, more like small legal archives for Native people in Altai Krai, and actually closer, to the north, to educate them about their rights and how to stand up for their rights against the oil developers and against the local and federal government. So as you could imagine, the work in Russia was very difficult to do, and right now it's impossible to do with the current people in power. But that was something that shaped my work on my dissertation. And this is something that actually, after the work in Russia became impossible, I started working with Native Americans, and I've met so many people. So we go up. And these are some of my good colleagues. Actually, these are people from Yakutia in the green, from Russia. But on the side, this woman, it's also Stamatopoulos. She's at Columbia University. She's one of the greatest teachers, one of the warmest people who actually walked me through the process and actually helped me understand how UN works, what international diplomacy is about, how I should behave when I meet people from the UN agency to represent my organization, because no one in my organization from Russia spoke English. So I was the face. I was, the administrator. I helped to do everything that we had to do for the organizations until we no longer could function together and work together. And when I started working with Native Americans, obviously at UCLA, I was a scholar, and Dwayne Champagne was he's one of the leading Native scholars in North America, actually, and he happened to be at UCLA, and he happened to be my mentor. I met a lot of people. Right here is me and Anita. Anita is from the Hopis, and we did a project with the Hopi, and she was very fun to meet and work with. She has an incredible sense of humor, and I learned a lot from her. And she's one of the teachers who actually shape my own vision of who I am as a teacher, as a person, as a woman, as an activist, and many more. But I just sort of have this picture as one of the dear one. So this is something that I started doing back, and I graduated, and I brought my students rather recently. Before the pandemic was the last time I brought the students, to just bring them to the UN and teach them about Indigenous advocacy, Native students. And now we can move to the next slide. And this is what I am doing at the moment here at San Jose State University. This is a recent one, and you probably know about this terrible war in Ukraine. And this boy is from the town where I grew up. And last spring, when Dr. Cho, asked me, and when I was hired, the war was in full-fledged. A lot of my friends got, it was very difficult when they started bombing. It's still very difficult, but because they continue to bomb Ukraine at the moment, even though the Russian army there is a demobilization and Ukrainian army advances, they are destroying infrastructures right now, and almost every big city had been affected. But what we've done, we started a fundraiser. Some of you probably have heard of it. And part of this fundraiser was getting a scanner for the library in the town, my hometown where I grew up. And then we ran a children drawing exhibition. And this exhibition was one of the winners, but it also got actually up to the Ministry of Culture level. I've actually read an article recently. They featured this boy picture because this picture actually shows the angels who protect the army, and some of these angels are prominent Ukrainian figures. So this is, this is a big picture. So what we're trying to do at the moment with this, we're trying to have an exhibition at one of the galleries at San Jose State University, and Jennifer, if you are here, Jennifer Hayes is one of the students who is a volunteer. I just want to thank you for all the work you do in this. So this is something that I'm very much engaged at the moment. Not because this is supportive of my professorship career, but because I cannot imagine not doing it. It's just something that, you know, I get up in the morning, I call up my friends, I go on Facebook, I send them messages, I cry with them, I listen to them. Right now, a friend of mine is trying to figure out how to actually make lights out of whatever, some physics stuff, because there is no electricity and she's cold. And we just talk, you know, when she has internet on. And this is something that I do just because, you know, just because this is who I am, I guess. And if you're interested, I can totally get you into this, but I'm gonna stop here and let you ask questions, because I know that we have like less than 15 minutes. But this is really what self-advocacy has been for me, and this is something that not only I find a lot of meanings, this is who I am, I guess, in so many ways. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that you're a storyteller. I love the stories. I love how there's just this thread throughout your stories of just being someone who, you know, shows up, you know, and I think what's interesting to me too is you were talking about earlier about embracing change. I mean, you definitely do that as you have taken these paths that maybe you didn't see coming, but they're all sort of leading you to these missions and goals that you love. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
So, so let's open up this for a Q&A then, folks. You can unmute yourselves if you'd like and ask a question, or just post it in the chat and Samantha or I will read it out loud. Oh, here we go. We've got some already. Do you want to, here, I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Rachel asks, what do you feel are some best practices for self-advocacy that new LIS professionals could be practicing? Where do we start with self-advocacy on our own journey once we found our foundational or theoretical self? Is it about embracing whatever comes your way? Anyway, that's 3 questions, but go ahead.
This is part of it, embracing. First, you have to ask yourself, you know, where is my pain located? You know, so many things that I've done actually were meaningful to me personally. I do Indigenous advocacy. I started it because of my family. And I feel really good among Native people from all over the world, actually. We are like brothers and sisters. We just connect like that. I do Ukrainian things because I have friends. It's a very personal thing. And if I don't do it, I feel bad. I feel that I'm betraying something within me. So I'm honest with myself. I'm honest about my own limitations. I learned to embrace my own limitations and imperfections and actually laugh at them. But I think taking care of your physical self, of your emotional self, and not being afraid to actually go out and share your story with others, even though sometimes these others may hurt you, being brave or just being who you are. I think this is the core advice that I could give you. It's not an easy thing. I've met a professor at UCLA who laughed at me when I told him about my, you know, my grandmother, for example, and about things that I believe. He said that we are all Indigenous. This is all bullshit. I cried, but, you know, I had a fellow student holding me and saying, look, this is how he sees you. And this is something to learn from. He is a good teacher. This is something for you to swallow up and learn to stand up for yourself if you meet somebody like this in the future. And I've met people much worse than him, but that was a good lesson to me. And I'm glad I've met him. It was a safe place for me to learn from. because I just believe school is a safe place to be, and that's the place where you can be heard, and there are people who would hold your hand, hopefully, and help you go. There are a lot of good people who want to help. So, yeah.
That's amazing and powerful. We do have another question here. Where are the best places to look for, ask for mentorship for ourselves? It sounds like you found quite a bit of mentorship with the people around you. Do you suggest looking there first, or would you suggest like a university, your teachers, your fellow students?
My best mentors were people who, I sometimes reached out to myself. Elsa Stamatopoulos was a big UN officer. I came up to her and I introduced myself and I told her about, and she said, I can help you. And we became friends, and we're still friends, and she shares things with me. So she was one of my mentors and friends. Champagne was somebody I came up myself to. So I found amazing teachers around me in, at UCLA, not in my own department, apart from a couple of friends. So there were the ones who helped me. So I would, while you're in school, it's good to see what your teachers are doing. And if you're interested, try to reach them out. Not everyone would respond, but, but some might.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, let's see here. In America, there seems to be a PR problem with libraries. The perception of libraries is that since we have Google, we don't need libraries. And I feel like many libraries are not advocating for themselves on how they are relevant and important to their communities. Do we just converse with others to practice advocacy?
I think it's important to know your community. I worked in a small library in a small town. I work in a university library, special library collection, and it is really about knowing your community, knowing the needs of your community that would make you sort of prominent. Quite often, your community would include kids and families, and this is a wonderful place. I think public libraries particularly is a wonderful place. If it is a university or college library, your community probably are your students and the faculty, but it's so important if you plan to be in academic settings to just go out to the classrooms and to take these students by the hands and bring them to the library, show them what is out there and tell them that Google is Google, but library is something much more. In fact, only like 6 or 10% of archival materials that are out there are actually on Google. Most of it is actually in locations. So know your community and sort of respond to that. That's sort of my first answer.
Thank you for that. That's incredible. I had no idea that only 6% of archival material was online. I feel like that's a great stat, that I had no idea, because I feel like so many people just say oh yeah, the information's all online. But if I could say no, 90% of it's not there. That's a great argument. Thank you for that.
No, totally. There are certain things you cannot digitize because there are difficulties with digitizing certain records, particularly archival records. They are there, so take them in, put the white gloves on, stick them into the archive and say, this is how it works. Yeah, and then they're gonna thank you for it. I have people who hated libraries. They would hide in the bathroom from me. When I work at Loyola Marymount here, I would take them out from the bathroom, the first year students, and bring them in, and then at the end of the semester they were quite happy and thankful for experience. But it takes work.
That helps. Thank you.
Work, yeah, fun work though. Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions?
Yeah, we're coming up on 7, so if no one has any questions, I think we're gonna probably wrap this up. I just want to start by thanking you so much, Dr. Gosart, for coming. I have notes here. I loved what you had to share. I wrote our own footing on this planet, moving with change. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and thank you for sharing your insights that you have on this. This has been really wonderful. So thank you so much.
No,
And
I just thank you for everyone for coming and listening to me, and reach out. You know how to find me.
Yep.
And I'd be happy. I'd be happy to help. So
Oh, thank
and
you.
engage you in various projects. There is something always going on. If you are interested, yeah, we need volunteers.
I feel like you might have hooked Rachel this evening. So
Yeah,
I'm always interested. I always have questions. Thank you so much.
sure.
All
And
right.
good luck with the semester, exams, final projects. You can do
Yeah.
it. You can do it.
All right, I'm gonna
Thank you
turn it
so
over
much.
to Samantha really quick, just so we can plug our own activity here. Go ahead, Samantha.
Okay. 1 second. I guess we're not going to do the second Padlet.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Dr. Gosart. This was absolutely amazing. And I hope that everyone that attended got as much out of it as the rest of us have. And again, just thank you. Moving on, though, be sure to sign up for our next events, our Around the World tour. I believe that's it's right in front of me. November 16th at 6 Pacific time. We'll be doing a tour of different libraries around the world, and we'll have a speaker from Congress, Sasha Dowdy, joining us. We'll also be having a giveaway for custom designed tote bags, SJSU students only, I'm afraid. So make sure that you sign up and we can have some fun. Oh, and I'll also put the sign up link in the
Oh,
chat.
I gotcha.
here. Oh, you already did. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
All right, I'm gonna
I
stop
think that's it.
recording now.